The snow fell softly over London on Christmas Eve of 1840, transforming Hyde Park into a scene from a winter painting. Lanterns hung from the trees, their golden light reflecting off the white blanket that covered the pathways. Families strolled through the decorated park, their laughter mixing with the distant sound of carolers singing near the Serpentine. Children ran through the snow, their delighted shrieks piercing the cold evening air. Edmund Carrington, the Duke of Thornhaven, walked alone through this festive scene like a ghost among the living. At 32, Edmund cut an imposing figure, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell slightly over his forehead, and grey eyes that could freeze a man with a single glance. He had earned his reputation as the most formidable duke in England. His estates were vast, his wealth considerable, his influence in Parliament undeniable. Men feared him. Women desired him but never dared approach. The ton whispered about the ice in his veins, the steel in his spine. Tonight, that steel had finally broken. 3 weeks. It had been only 3 weeks since he'd watched his mother's coffin lowered into the frozen ground at Thornhaven. The Dowager Duchess had been his last connection to warmth, to family, to anything resembling love in his carefully controlled world. His father had died 7 years earlier, leaving Edmund to shoulder the dukedom at 25. But his mother had remained, his anchor, his counsel, his one source of unconditional affection. Now she was gone. Edmund found himself on a secluded bench far from the cheerful crowds. The irony wasn't lost on him. Here he was, one of the most powerful men in England, sitting alone in Hyde Park on Christmas Eve while families celebrated around him. His townhouse in Grosvenor Square stood empty except for servants. His country estate echoed with silence. He had declined every invitation, every offer of holiday company. The grief he'd held back during the funeral, during the weeks of managing his mother's affairs, during every moment when duty demanded he maintain his legendary composure, it all rose up at once. His hands trembled, his chest tightened. For the first time since childhood, Edmund Carrington wept. He pressed his gloved hands to his face, shoulders shaking, trying desperately to maintain some shred of dignity even here, alone in the falling snow. The pain felt like it would tear him apart from the inside. "Why are you crying?" Edmund's head snapped up. Standing before him was a small boy, perhaps 5 years old, bundled in a fine wool coat with a scarf wrapped haphazardly around his neck. His cheeks were rosy from the cold, his brown eyes wide with innocent concern. In one mittened hand, he held what appeared to be a half-eaten biscuit. In the other, he clutched a handkerchief, wrinkled and bearing a suspicious stain that might have been jam. "My mamma says crying makes the heart less heavy," the boy continued solemnly, extending the dubious handkerchief toward Edmund. "You can use mine. I already used it a bit for my nose, but the other side is mostly clean." Edmund stared at the child, completely at a loss. In his entire adult life, no one had ever acknowledged his vulnerability. No one had ever dared. Yet here was this tiny person offering comfort with the simple directness only a child possessed. Edmund's voice came out rough. He cleared his throat. "Thank you, but I couldn't possibly—" "Are you sad because it's Christmas?" The boy didn't wait for an answer. Instead, he climbed onto the bench beside Edmund with the ease of someone who'd never learned to fear dukes or social hierarchies. "I was sad at Christmas last year because my papa had just gone to be with the angels. But Mama says the angels needed him more than we did, which seems rather selfish of the angels if you ask me, but Mama says I mustn't say such things." The boy's matter-of-fact delivery startled a sound from Edmund. Not quite a laugh, but close. "Your father, he passed away. Last winter." The boy nodded seriously. "He got very sick, and then one day he just went to sleep and didn't wake up. Mama cried for ages. But then she said we had to be brave and that Papa would want us to still have Christmas and be happy." He studied Edmund with disconcerting intensity. "Are you alone too? Is that why you're crying?" Edmund found himself unable to lie to those earnest brown eyes. "Yes, my mother died recently." "Oh!" The boy's expression filled with such genuine sympathy that Edmund felt his throat tighten again. "That's terribly sad. Mamas are the best thing in the whole world. Well, except for puppies, but puppies don't give hugs quite as well." He paused thoughtfully. "You should have a new mama then." "I'm afraid that's not quite how it works, but it should work that way." the boy interrupted with the confidence of someone who had clearly given this matter serious consideration. When Mrs. Henderson's cat died, she got a new cat, and now she's happy again. You should get a new mama. Despite everything, Edmund felt the corners of his mouth twitch. One cannot simply acquire a new mother. No, I suppose not. The boy sighed dramatically, then his face brightened with sudden inspiration. But you know what? You could have mine. Well, not have her like she's your mama. That would be silly because you're grown up. But you could. He struggled to find the right words, his small face scrunched in concentration. Edmund waited, oddly captivated by this strange little creature who had invaded his solitude. How you could come to our house and have Christmas with us, the boy finally declared triumphantly. My mama makes the most delicious biscuits in all of England, and she knows how to make sad people feel better. She's very good at it. She made me feel better when Papa died, and Mrs. Henderson when her cat died, and even our cook when her sister moved to Yorkshire. That's very kind, but... And she's alone too. The boy was warming to his theme now, bouncing slightly on the bench. Well, not alone because she has me, but she doesn't have a husband anymore. And sometimes I hear her crying at night when she thinks I'm asleep. Papa used to make her laugh all the time, and now she mostly only smiles at me, which is nice. But I think she should have more reasons to smile, don't you? Edmund found himself genuinely moved by the boy's obvious love for his mother. I'm certain your mother is very fortunate to have such a thoughtful son. I'm Oliver, the boy announced, extending his sticky hand. Oliver Hartwood. I'm 5 3/4, which is nearly 6, which is nearly grown up. Edmund shook the small hand gravely. Edmund Carrington. I'm 32, which I'm told is actually grown up, though some days I wonder. Oliver's eyes grew round. Carrington? Like the Duke of Thornhaven? Mama pointed out your house once when we drove past Grosvenor Square. She said you're the most important duke in all of London. One of them, perhaps. Did you know, Oliver leaned in conspiratorially, that your house has 17 chimneys? I counted them. Well, Mama counted them because I can only count to 10 properly, but I helped. Edmund felt something warm and unfamiliar bloom in his chest, something that felt dangerously close to affection. This ridiculous, wonderful child with his biscuit crumbs and his earnest concern and his complete lack of fear was exactly what Edmund's frozen heart needed at this moment. Oliver! Oliver! A woman's voice called out, tinged with panic. Oliver Hartwood, where have you gone? That's Mama! Oliver jumped up, still holding Edmund's hand. Mama, Mama, over here! I've found someone who needs your help! Edmund tried to stand, to compose himself, to somehow transform back into the formidable Duke of Thornhaven before this woman arrived, but Oliver's grip on his hand was surprisingly strong, and his face was still wet with tears, and there was absolutely no way to salvage his dignity. A figure emerged from between the trees, moving quickly through the snow. She was petite, wrapped in a dark blue cloak, her bonnet slightly askew as if she'd been running. As she came closer, Edmund could see she was perhaps 28 or 30, with delicate features and brown eyes that currently reflected both relief at finding her son and alarm at the situation she'd found him in. She stopped dead when she saw Oliver holding hands with a tall, dark-haired gentleman whose expensive greatcoat and aristocratic bearing were unmistakable even through his obvious distress. Oliver! Her voice came out as a mortified whisper. What are you? Your Grace! She recognized him, and her face flooded with color. I am so terribly sorry. Oliver, release his Grace's hand this instant. But, Mamma, he's sad, Oliver protested, tightening his grip on Edmund's hand. His mama died just like Papa did, and he was crying all alone, and it's Christmas Eve, we can't just leave him here. The woman, Mrs. Hartwood, Edmund's mind supplied, looked like she wanted the ground to swallow her whole. Oliver, his Grace is... The Duke has... You cannot simply... She took a deep breath, clearly trying to gather her composure. When she spoke again, her voice was carefully controlled, though her cheeks remained pink with embarrassment. Your Grace, please forgive my son's forwardness. He sometimes forgets his manners in his enthusiasm to help others. Oliver, come here at once. But Edmund surprised himself by speaking first. Please don't apologize. Your son has been unexpectedly kind. I find I'm grateful for the company. Mrs. Hartwood's eyes widened slightly. She studied his face. still marked with tears despite his attempts to compose himself, and something softened in her expression. "Mama, I told him about your biscuits," Oliver said proudly, "and about how you make everyone feel better. And I said he should come have Christmas with us because nobody should be alone on Christmas, and Papa would say that's the right thing to do, wouldn't he?" "Oliver." Mrs. Hartwood's voice held equal parts exasperation and affection. She looked at Edmund with obvious mortification. "Your Grace, I cannot apologize enough. My son has a very generous heart, but he doesn't quite understand the boundaries of— Are your biscuits truly as delicious as he claims?" Edmund heard himself ask. Mrs. Hartwood blinked, clearly not expecting the question. Yes, I suppose they're quite good. I used my grandmother's recipe with cinnamon and—" She stopped, seeming to realize the absurdity of discussing biscuits with the Duke of Thornhaven in Hyde Park on Christmas Eve. "Your Grace, surely you have plans for the evening." Oliver shouldn't have presumed— "I have no plans." The admission came out more starkly than Edmund intended. "My mother recently passed, and I find myself— He couldn't finish. The grief rose up again, catching in his throat. "Oh, you poor man," Mrs. Hartwood said softly, and the genuine compassion in her voice nearly undid him completely. "I lost my husband last year. I know something of that particular darkness." Their eyes met, and in that moment, Edmund saw someone who truly understood. Not someone offering empty condolences or awkward platitudes, but someone who had walked through the same valley of grief. "See, Mama." Oliver tugged on both their hands now, having somehow acquired his mother's as well. "You can help him, that's what you do, you help people." Mrs. Hartwood bit her lip, clearly torn between propriety and compassion. Edmund watched her internal struggle with unexpected intensity, realizing that he desperately wanted her to extend the invitation her son had offered, not because of duty or charity, but because something about this small family had already begun to thaw the ice around his heart. "Your Grace," she said finally, her voice gentle, "if you truly have no other commitments this evening, and if you could forgive the informality and the certain chaos that comes with a 5-year-old's presence, Oliver and I would be honored to share our Christmas Eve supper with you. There will be biscuits," Oliver added enthusiastically, "and Mama always makes too much food anyway, and I know lots of stories and songs, and—" "Oliver, breathe," his mother said with a small smile before turning back to Edmund. "Truly, Your Grace, you would be most welcome. Our home in Mayfair is modest compared to your own, I'm certain, but there's warmth and good food and—" She hesitated. "And perhaps we could all use the company on what can be a rather lonely evening." Edmund knew he should decline. This was the widow of the Honourable Charles Hartwood. He'd known Charles slightly, a decent fellow, younger son of the Marquis of Ashford. The social difference between a duchess and the widow of a second son was considerable, though not insurmountable. But more than that, he barely knew these people. Accepting such an invitation was irregular at best. Yet as he looked at Oliver's hopeful face and saw the understanding in Mrs. Hartwood's eyes, Edmund found all his objections dissolving like snow in the warmth of their kindness. "I would like that very much," he said quietly, "if you're certain it wouldn't be an imposition." "Not at all," Oliver crowed, jumping up and down. "Mama, the Duke is coming to Christmas. Papa would be so happy. Remember how he always said we should help people who are sad?" Mrs. Hartwood's eyes grew bright with unshed tears, but she smiled. "Yes, darling. Papa would indeed be very happy." She turned to Edmund and her smile softened. "Come then, Your Grace. Our house is just a short walk from here. And please, call me Amelia. I think if we're to share Christmas Eve, we can dispense with some formalities." "Edmund," he replied, feeling something loosen in his chest. "Please, call me Edmund." Oliver grabbed both their hands again, beginning to pull them along the snowy path. "This is going to be the best Christmas ever. Wait until you see our parlour. Mama decorated with holly and ivy, and we have the most enormous goose for dinner. And after we eat, Mama lets me stay up late and we sit by the fire and tell stories." As they walked through Hyde Park, Oliver chattering between them, Edmund caught Amelia's eye over the boy's head. She gave him a small, understanding smile that seemed to say, "I know this is strange, but perhaps strange is exactly what we both need tonight." And for the first time in 3 weeks, perhaps for the first time in years, Edmund felt something besides the cold emptiness that had become his constant companion. He felt hope. The Hartwood house on Upper Brook Street in Mayfair, was indeed modest compared to Edmund's Grosvenor Square mansion, but it radiated a warmth that his grand townhouse had never possessed. As they entered, Oliver announced loudly, "We're home, and we brought the Duke." An elderly butler appeared, his eyes widening at the sight of Edmund. "Your Grace, Madam, I wasn't aware we were expecting—" "Neither was I, Matthews," Amelia said with a slightly helpless laugh as she removed her cloak. "But it seems Oliver has appointed himself matchmaker for lonely souls on Christmas Eve." "I'm not a matchmaker," Oliver protested, struggling out of his coat. "I'm a helper. There's a difference." Edmund found himself smiling, actually smiling, as he handed his greatcoat to the stunned butler. The entrance hall was decorated with garlands of holly and ivy, and the scent of cinnamon and roasting meat wafted from somewhere deeper in the house. "Mama, can we show His Grace, I mean Edmund? Can we show Edmund the parlour? And can he see my toy soldiers, and can we have the biscuits now?" "Oliver, take a breath," Amelia said, though her tone was affectionate. "Edmund has only just arrived. Perhaps we should let him—" "I would love to see the toy soldiers," Edmund said, surprising himself with his own eagerness. There was something about Oliver's enthusiasm that was utterly infectious. Oliver's face lit up like one of the Christmas lanterns. "Really? They're upstairs in my room. Papa gave them to me before he—" The boy's face sobered slightly. "Before he went away. But they're very fine soldiers. Come on." Before Amelia could protest, Oliver had grabbed Edmund's hand and was pulling him toward the stairs. "Oliver, His Grace might not wish to climb stairs immediately upon arrival." "It's quite all right," Edmund assured her, allowing himself to be tugged along. "I believe I'm about to receive a military briefing." He glanced back to see Amelia standing in the hall, her hand pressed to her mouth, her eyes bright with what might have been tears or laughter, or both. She looked beautiful in her uncertainty, and Edmund felt an odd flutter in his chest before Oliver's insistent pulling drew his attention back to the stairs. The boy's bedroom was exactly what one would expect: a warm space with a small bed, shelves of books, and a corner dedicated to an impressive array of wooden soldiers arranged in careful formation. "You see," Oliver said seriously, dropping to his knees beside the soldiers, "these are the infantry and these are the cavalry, and this one here with the fancy hat is the general. Papa taught me all about battles and strategy." "Do you know about battles?" Edmund lowered himself to sit on the floor beside the boy, his expensive trousers be damned. "I know a bit. My father was quite interested in military history." "Was he?" Oliver's eyes lit up. "Did he fight in battles?" "No, but he studied them extensively. He particularly admired Wellington's strategies." "Wellington? The one who beat Napoleon?" Oliver began rearranging his soldiers with renewed energy. "That's what Papa said too. Look, I can show you the Battle of Waterloo, well, sort of. I don't have quite enough soldiers for the whole battle, so we have to pretend some of them are doing double duty." Edmund found himself genuinely engaged as Oliver explained his limited understanding of the famous battle, mixing historical details his father had taught him with pure 5-year-old imagination. The boy's enthusiasm was captivating, his complete lack of pretense refreshing. "You know," Oliver said suddenly, abandoning the soldiers to study Edmund's face, "you look much less sad now. Mama says that's what happens when people have something besides sadness to think about. She says sadness is important because it means we love someone very much, but we can't let it be the only thing in our hearts." Edmund felt his throat tighten. "Your mother sounds very wise." "She is," Oliver said proudly. "She's the wisest person I know, and the prettiest, and the best at hugs, and the best at everything, really." He paused. "Do you think she's pretty?" The question was so direct, so innocent, that Edmund couldn't help but laugh. "I've only just met your mother, Oliver." "But you have eyes, don't you?" Oliver persisted with impeccable 5-year-old logic. "You can see if someone is pretty right away. I knew Mrs. Henderson was pretty the first time I saw her, even though she's very old, probably nearly 40. Edmund bit back another laugh. "Well, yes, your mother is. She's very lovely." "I knew it!" Oliver bounced excitedly. "You think she's pretty? That's good, because she deserves someone who thinks she's pretty. Papa always told her she was beautiful, and I think she misses hearing it." His face grew serious again. "Does anyone tell you that you're handsome?" Edmund blinked, completely thrown by the shift. That's not really—" "Because you are," Oliver said matter-of-factly. very handsome. Dark and brooding, like the hero in one of Mama's novels that she thinks I don't know about. She reads them when she thinks I'm asleep, and sometimes she sighs at the romantic parts. "Oliver," Amelia's mortified voice came from the doorway. "What are you telling His Grace?" Edmund turned to find her standing in the doorway, her face flushed with embarrassment. She'd removed her bonnet, and he could see that her brown hair was styled simply but elegantly, with a few rebellious curls escaping around her face. "I was just saying that Edmund is handsome like the men in your books," Oliver said innocently. "The ones with the dark hair and the mysterious pasts and the—" "That is quite enough," Amelia said firmly, though Edmund could see she was fighting a smile. "Supper is ready. Come down and wash your hands." "But we were playing soldiers." "The soldiers will wait. His Grace needs proper food, not just military strategy." Oliver sighed dramatically but obediently headed for the door. As he passed his mother, he stage-whispered, "I think he likes you, Mama. He said you were lovely." "Oliver Hartwood." Amelia's face turned scarlet, but Oliver was already running down the hall, giggling. Edmund rose from the floor, brushing off his trousers. When he looked up, Amelia was still standing in the doorway, her hands pressed to her flaming cheeks. "I am so terribly sorry," she said. "He has no filter whatsoever. His father used to say Oliver could charm a bishop and scandalize a duchess in the same breath. Please don't apologize." Edmund moved toward her, keeping a respectful distance. He's wonderful, actually. I can't remember the last time I laughed so much in such a short span of time." Amelia's embarrassment softened into something gentler. "He has that effect on people. Even in the darkest days after Charles died, Oliver somehow found ways to make me smile." She paused, studying Edmund's face. "You do look better, less haunted." "I feel better," Edmund admitted, "which is rather remarkable considering I met your son approximately 30 minutes ago," and he proceeded to announce that I should acquire a new mother, appropriate his own mother for my benefit, and drag me upstairs to discuss military tactics. Amelia laughed, a genuine warm sound that seemed to fill the house. "That does sound like Oliver. I should warn you that subtlety is not his strong suit. I'm beginning to gather that." Their eyes met, and Edmund felt that flutter again, something he hadn't experienced in years, something that felt dangerously like attraction. No, he told himself firmly. He was here because he'd been moved by a child's kindness, because he was grieving and lonely and this family had offered him refuge, that was all. But as Amelia smiled at him, her eyes crinkling at the corners, Edmund had to admit that perhaps Oliver wasn't entirely wrong about his mother being lovely. Perhaps she was beautiful, actually. "Shall we go down to supper?" Amelia asked, breaking the moment. "Before Oliver eats all the rolls himself." Edmund offered his arm, and after a moment's hesitation, she took it. As they descended the stairs together, he heard Oliver's voice from the dining room, clearly speaking to the servants. "We have the Duke of Thornhaven for Christmas. I found him in the park, and he was sad, so I brought him home. Mama says it's important to help people, and Papa always said Christmas was about family, and now the Duke can be part of our family for tonight." Edmund felt Amelia tense slightly beside him. "Oliver has a very generous definition of family," she murmured. "Perhaps the world needs more people with generous definitions," Edmund replied. When they entered the dining room, Oliver was already seated, bouncing in his chair with excitement. The table was set simply but elegantly, with candles casting a warm glow over the holly centerpiece. The food, roasted goose, potatoes, winter vegetables, smelled divine. As they sat down to eat, Oliver keeping up a constant stream of chatter, Edmund realized something profound. For the first time since his mother's death, he wasn't thinking about his grief. He wasn't drowning in loneliness. He was simply here, present, alive. And it was all because of a 5-year-old boy who'd seen a stranger crying and decided to share his mother. Supper was unlike anything Edmund had experienced in years, perhaps ever. At his own table, meals were formal affairs marked by silence, broken only by necessary conversation. His mother had maintained certain standards, and while Edmund had loved her dearly, their dinners had always been civilized, proper events. This was chaos. Beautiful, warm, life-filled chaos. Oliver talked almost non-stop, sharing stories about his day, asking Edmund increasingly personal questions. Do dukes have to wear their coronets all the time, even to bed? And occasionally getting so excited, he forgot to eat until Amelia gently reminded him. And then Mrs. Henderson's cat, the new one, not the dead one, climbed all the way up our garden tree and couldn't get down, and the footman had to get a ladder. But the cat jumped onto his head, and he said a word that Mama said I must never repeat, but it rhymed with brass. Oliver, Amelia interrupted gently. I believe His Grace understands the general situation without the vocabulary details. Sorry, Mama. Oliver turned to Edmund with a conspiratorial grin. Grown-ups say very interesting words when they think children aren't listening. I've learned quite a lot. Edmund fought to keep his expression serious. I'm certain you have. Do you say interesting words when you're frustrated? Oliver asked with genuine curiosity. Oliver. Amelia's cheeks flushed pink again, but Edmund found himself answering honestly. I do, actually. Usually when I'm reviewing parliamentary bills that make no logical sense, or when my steward brings me accounts that don't balance. What kinds of words? Oliver leaned forward eagerly. Edmund, please don't, Amelia started. Oh, the usual, Edmund said gravely. Confound it. Blast. On particularly trying days, I've been known to utter a bloody hell. Oliver's eyes went wide. Caillou said bloody hell, Mama, did you hear? A duke said bloody hell. Yes, thank you both very much, Amelia said, but she was laughing despite herself. Oliver, eat your potatoes before they grow cold. Edmund caught her eye across the table and saw genuine amusement there, mixed with something that might have been appreciation. It occurred to him that she was probably accustomed to people treating her son with distant politeness or barely concealed annoyance. Oliver was undeniably precocious, the kind of child who could exhaust adults within minutes. But Edmund found he wasn't exhausted. Instead, he was energized in a way he hadn't felt in months, perhaps years. Oliver's relentless curiosity, his complete lack of pretense, his unconditional affection already extended to a virtual stranger. It was all so refreshingly genuine. Tell me about your soldiers, Oliver, Edmund said, partly to give the boy an outlet for his energy and partly because he genuinely wanted to know. Did your father teach you about military history? Oliver's face lit up, but there was a shadow of sadness behind his excitement. Oh yes, Papa loved history. He said it was important to learn about the past so we could understand the present. He told me all about Wellington and Nelson and... The boy's voice caught slightly. He was going to take me to see the Tower of London. We were going to go next spring, but then he got sick. Amelia reached across the table to squeeze her son's hand. Papa would have loved that outing very much. I miss him, Oliver said softly, his usual exuberance momentarily dimmed. Especially at Christmas, he always made Christmas so magical. Edmund felt the familiar ache of grief rise in his chest, but this time it was mixed with empathy for this small boy who understood loss far too early in life. I understand. I miss my mother terribly, especially today. Oliver looked up at him, and in that moment something passed between them, a recognition of shared pain, of understanding that transcended age and circumstance. But you know what? Oliver said, his voice brightening with characteristic resilience. We're both here now and we're not alone anymore. At least not tonight. And I think that's what Papa and your Mama would want, for us not to be alone. The simple wisdom of it struck Edmund like a physical blow. This child, this wonderful, instinctive, emotionally intelligent child, had somehow articulated exactly what Edmund needed to hear. You're absolutely right, Edmund said, his voice rough with emotion. I think our parents would be very pleased with this arrangement. See, Mama, Oliver turned to his mother triumphantly. I told you it was the right thing to invite him. You did indeed, darling. Amelia's eyes were suspiciously bright. You have your father's kind heart. And your wisdom, Oliver added seriously. Papa always said you were the wisest person he knew. He said marrying you was the smartest thing he ever did. Amelia blinked rapidly, clearly fighting tears. Did he now? Oh, yes. He told me the night before he died. He said, Oliver, you must always take care of your Mama. She's precious beyond measure. So I try very hard to take care of you, Mama, even though I'm only 5 3/4. The child's sincerity was almost unbearable in its sweetness. Edmund watched Amelia struggle to compose herself, saw the love and grief and pride warring on her face. You do an excellent job, my love, she whispered. Edmund found himself profoundly moved by the obvious bond between mother and son. They had weathered devastating loss together, yet here they were, still loving, still laughing, still opening their home to a stranger in need. It was a kind of courage Edmund hadn't encountered in his privileged world of balls and political maneuvering. The conversation gradually shifted to lighter topics. Oliver wanted to know everything about Edmund's life. What was it like being a duke? Did he have horses? How many rooms did his house have? Did he have any brothers or sisters? Alas, no, Edmund answered. I was an only child. I would have liked a brother or sister growing up. You can share me, Oliver announced. I've always wanted an older brother. Well, technically I wanted a younger brother so I could be in charge, but an older one would be good too, especially if he's a duke. That would make me terribly important at school. Oliver, you cannot simply claim his grace as a brother, Amelia said, though her tone was more amused than reproving. Why not? We're having Christmas together. That's what families do. Edmund found himself saying, I would be honored to be considered your friend, Oliver, and friends are rather like family in their own way. The boy's face transformed with joy. Really? We're friends? Mama, did you hear? The Duke of Thornhaven is my friend. I heard, darling. I'm certain the entire street heard. After supper, true to Oliver's prediction, they retired to the parlor where a cheerful fire crackled in the grate. The room was cozy and inviting, decorated with evergreen boughs and red ribbons. A small tree stood in the corner, festooned with paper decorations that had clearly been made by childish hands. I made those stars, Oliver said proudly, pointing to the somewhat lopsided ornaments. And those angels? Well, Mama says they're angels. They're supposed to have wings, but mine look more like arms that are too long. But Mama says they're perfect anyway. They are perfect, Amelia confirmed, because you made them with love. Edmund studied the tree, thinking of the elaborate decorations that adorned Thornhaven at Christmas. Expensive glass ornaments imported from Germany, ribbon that cost more per yard than most families spent on food for a week. This simple tree with its homemade decorations was worth far more. Do you have a tree at your house? Oliver asked. Edmund realized with a pang that he didn't. He'd told his staff not to bother this year, unable to face the traditions that would only emphasize his mother's absence. Not this year, he said quietly. Oliver's face fell. No tree. But Edmund, you must have a tree. It's Christmas. It's quite all right. No, it's not all right at all. Oliver looked distressed. Everyone needs a tree at Christmas. Mama, Edmund doesn't have a tree. Darling, His Grace has his reasons. But it's wrong. Oliver's eyes filled with tears, the first sign of genuine upset Edmund had seen from the boy. Papa always said Christmas trees are important because they remind us that life keeps growing even in winter. Edmund needs to remember that life keeps growing. The child's distress was so genuine, so focused on Edmund's well-being rather than any superficial concern, that Edmund felt his carefully maintained composure crack further. You're right, he said, kneeling down to Oliver's level. I do need to remember that. Thank you for reminding me. Oliver threw his arms around Edmund's neck in a fierce hug. You can share our tree, and next year you'll have your own. Promise me you'll have your own. Edmund found his arms coming up to hold the small body, felt the boy's rapid heartbeat against his chest. When was the last time someone had embraced him like this, with such uncomplicated affection? I promise, he whispered. When Oliver finally pulled back, he was smiling again. Good. Now, Mama promised I could stay up late, and we always tell stories by the fire. Do you know any good stories, Edmund? They settled near the hearth. Oliver on the floor, Amelia in an armchair, Edmund in the chair across from her. The firelight cast a warm glow over the scene, and Edmund felt something in his chest loosen further. Let me think, Edmund said. I know. When I was about your age, my father took me to Thornhaven. That's my country estate. In winter, the lakes had frozen solid, and he decided to teach me to ice skate. Oh, I've never been ice skating. Oliver's eyes went wide. What happened? Well, I was quite confident that I could simply walk onto the ice and glide about like I'd seen others do. I told my father I didn't need any instruction. I was, I'm afraid, a rather arrogant child. Amelia's lips twitched. Difficult to imagine. Edmund shot her a wry look. I stepped onto the ice, took 2 steps, and promptly fell flat on my face. Then I tried to get up and fell again, and again. I must have fallen 20 times in the first 10 minutes. Oliver giggled. You fell on your face even though you're a duke. Being a duke doesn't prevent one from falling on one's face, I'm afraid. If anything, it makes it more likely because one tends to be overly confident. Edmund smiled at the memory. My father was laughing so hard he could barely stand. Finally, he skated over. He was quite good, and helped me up. He said, Edmund, everyone falls. The trick is to fall forward, not back. If you're going to fail, fail while trying to move ahead. Oliver considered this solemnly. That's very wise. Did you get better at skating? Eventually, yes, though I fell many more times first. But I remembered what my father said. Fall forward. It became something of a motto for me. I like that, Oliver said. Fall forward. He looked at his mother. Did you hear that, Mama? If we're going to fail, we should fail while trying to move ahead. I heard, darling. It's excellent advice. Edmund found himself looking at Amelia over Oliver's head. The firelight played across her features, illuminating the gentle intelligence in her eyes, the soft curve of her mouth. She was watching her son with such tender attention, such obvious love. She's remarkable, Edmund thought suddenly. Not just lovely, but remarkable. He pushed the thought away, focusing back on Oliver. Now I believe you promised to tell me the story about the pig. Oh, yes. Oliver launched into a rambling tale about their neighbour's escaped pig that had somehow ended up in their garden, eaten all of Amelia's roses, and then refused to leave until it had been fed an entire loaf of bread. The story was probably embellished considerably, but it was told with such enthusiasm that Edmund found himself laughing genuinely, the kind of deep, unguarded laughter he hadn't experienced in months. As the evening wore on, Oliver gradually grew quieter, his energetic chatter giving way to longer pauses. Finally, his head drooped onto his mother's lap. Someone is ready for bed, Amelia said softly, stroking her son's hair. No, I'm not, Oliver protested weakly, his eyes already half closed. I'm just resting my eyes so I can hear Edmund's stories better. Of course you are, darling. Edmund stood. I should take my leave. It's growing late, and you need to get this young man to bed. But Oliver's eyes snapped open. No, you can't leave. It's Christmas Eve. You're supposed to stay until at least midnight. That's when Christmas officially starts. Oliver, His Grace has been more than patient with us. Please? Oliver sat up, suddenly wide awake again with the resilience of childhood. We haven't even had the biscuits yet, and Mama was going to play the pianoforte and sing carols, and I wanted to show Edmund my storybook about knights. Edmund looked at Amelia uncertainly. I don't wish to overstay my welcome. You're not, she said, and there was something in her voice, a warmth, a sincerity that made his heart skip. Truly, if you'd like to stay longer, we'd be delighted. The biscuits are quite good, and I confess I've enjoyed the evening immensely. Their eyes met again, and Edmund felt that dangerous flutter intensify. There was something happening here, something beyond simple kindness or holiday charity, something that both thrilled and terrified him. Then I would be honored to stay for biscuits and carols, he said. Oliver cheered, his exhaustion apparently forgotten, and scrambled off his mother's lap. I'll go get my storybook. Don't eat all the biscuits while I'm gone. As the boy raced from the room, Amelia smiled apologetically. I really don't know where he gets the energy. It's wonderful, Edmund said honestly. He's wonderful. He is rather special, Amelia agreed, her voice soft with maternal pride. Though I'm certain I'm biased. She paused, seeming to gather courage. Edmund, I want you to know I realize this evening has been rather unconventional, but I'm glad Oliver found you in the park. I'm glad we could offer you some companionship tonight. I'm the one who's grateful, Edmund replied. I came to that park contemplating the bleakest Christmas of my life. Your son's kindness, your kindness, has transformed this evening into something quite different. Oliver has a gift for seeing what people need. His father was the same way. Amelia's expression grew distant. Charles could walk into a room and immediately know who was struggling, who needed a kind word. Oliver inherited that from him. You must miss him terribly. I do, every day. She looked at Edmund directly. But grief is a strange companion, isn't it? Some days it's overwhelming, and other days it's just a dull ache. And then there are moments like tonight, when I realize I can still laugh, still enjoy myself, and the guilt of that enjoyment is almost worse than the grief itself. Edmund understood completely. Yes, Exactly that. It helps, I think, to be around someone who understands. Amelia's smile was sad but genuine. Most people offer sympathy but don't truly comprehend. They haven't lost someone who was the center of their world. Before Edmund could respond, Oliver burst back into the room with a large, well-worn storybook. "Here, this is my favorite. It's about Sir Galahad and his quest for the Holy Grail. Can you read it to me, Edmund? Mama's read it 100 times, and I want to hear how you tell it." And so Edmund found himself reading aloud about knights and quests, while Oliver sat pressed against his side, occasionally interrupting to point out particularly exciting illustrations or to add his own commentary. Amelia retrieved a plate of biscuits, which were indeed as delicious as promised, and they ate while Edmund read, the scene so domestic and warm that he felt something deep inside him begin to thaw. This, he thought, this is what I've been missing. Not just company, not just distraction from grief, but connection. Genuine, unpretentious, warm, human connection. When Oliver finally began to yawn too widely to hide, Amelia insisted he go to bed. The boy extracted a promise from Edmund to visit again soon, before allowing himself to be led upstairs. Edmund waited in the parlour, listening to the soft sounds of Amelia settling her son for the night, the creak of floorboards, the murmur of voices, the click of a door. When she returned, she carried 2 glasses of sherry. "I thought you might like something warming before you venture back out into the cold," she said, handing him a glass. "Thank you." He accepted it gratefully. "Your son is remarkable, Amelia. Truly. He is, isn't he?" She settled into her chair with her own sherry. "Sometimes I look at him and wonder how Charles and I created someone so absolutely perfect. Perfect is the right word. His emotional intelligence, his kindness, his joy, they're extraordinary." Amelia looked at him with something that might have been surprise. Most people find him exhausting. Too loud, too curious, too much. Then most people are fools. She laughed softly. "Perhaps. But it's kind of you to say." She paused, studying him with those perceptive brown eyes. "You're different than I expected, Your Grace." "Edmund, please." "Edmund, then. You're different than your reputation would suggest." "My reputation?" "The Ice Duke. The most formidable man in London. The one who can freeze the blood in your veins with a single glance." She smiled. "I've heard the stories. Everyone has." Edmund felt a familiar defensiveness rise. "I suppose I've earned that reputation. I'm not particularly warm or approachable in society. Yet tonight you've been nothing but warm, patient with Oliver's endless questions, kind about my humble home, genuine in your emotions." She tilted her head. "Which is the real Edmund Carrington?" It was such a direct question that Edmund found himself answering with equal directness. "Both, perhaps. Society requires a certain armor. One doesn't maintain a dukedom by being soft. But underneath—" He paused, searching for words. "Underneath, I suppose I'm just a man who misses his mother and doesn't know how to navigate the world without her." "We're more alike than different, then," Amelia said softly. "I spent the first 6 months after Charles died, pretending I had everything under control, smiling at social calls, managing the household, being strong for Oliver. And then one day I simply collapsed in the garden and cried for 3 hours straight. What happened then? Oliver found me. He was only 4. He climbed into my lap and said, 'Mama, it's okay to be sad, Papa would understand.' And somehow, hearing that from my 4-year-old son, I realized I'd been trying too hard to be strong. That grief isn't weakness, it's love with nowhere to go." Edmund felt tears prick his eyes. That's beautiful and terrible and true." "Yes." Amelia sipped her sherry. "So here we are. 2 people who understand that particular truth, sharing Christmas Eve because my son has the instincts of a matchmaker." The word matchmaker hung in the air between them. Edmund's heart rate increased. "He's quite determined, isn't he?" Edmund said carefully. "Terribly." Amelia's cheeks coloured slightly. "I apologize if his enthusiasm made you uncomfortable. He's gotten it into his head that I need someone, not to replace his father, he's very clear on that, but someone to share life with." "And do you want that?" The question escaped before Edmund could stop it. Amelia looked startled, then thoughtful. "I don't know," she said honestly. "Charles was my best friend, my partner in everything. The thought of trying to recreate that with someone else seems impossible. Yet I confess I'm lonely. Not all the time. Oliver fills so many hours with his energy. But in the quiet moments, yes. I miss having someone to share thoughts with. Someone to discuss the day's events with. Someone to simply sit with in companionable silence. Edmund understood completely. My mother was my closest confidant. She was the one person I could be entirely myself with. Without her, I feel rather adrift. Exactly. Amelia's eyes held his. And then Oliver brings home a grieving Duke on Christmas Eve, and suddenly I'm sitting with someone who actually understands. It's rather extraordinary when you think about it. Extraordinary indeed. Edmund found he couldn't look away from her face. Your son may be wiser than either of us gives him credit for. Oh, I give him considerable credit, Amelia smiled. He has a gift for knowing what people need. Sometimes I think he sees the world more clearly than we do, without all our adult complications and fears getting in the way. The clock on the mantel chimed 11. Edmund realized with surprise that he'd been here for nearly 4 hours, and it felt like minutes. I should go, he said reluctantly. I've imposed on your kindness long enough. It hasn't been an imposition. Amelia stood as he did. It's been lovely, actually. The best Christmas Eve I've had since Charles died. For me as well, the best evening I've had in longer than I care to admit. They walked together to the entrance hall, where Matthews appeared with Edmund's greatcoat. As the butler helped him into it, Amelia said, Edmund, would you... That is, if you have no other plans, would you like to join us for Christmas dinner tomorrow? Oliver would be thrilled, and I... She hesitated. I would be very happy to see you again. Edmund's heart swelled. He should decline. This was already irregular enough. Spending both Christmas Eve and Christmas Day with a widow and her young son would certainly raise eyebrows if anyone learned of it. But he found he didn't care about eyebrows or society's expectations. I would like that very much, he said. Amelia's smile was radiant. Wonderful. Shall we say 2 o'clock? That gives Oliver time to terrorize his presence in the morning and hopefully wear himself out somewhat. 2 o'clock, Edmund agreed. He hesitated, then added, Amelia, thank you. For everything. For seeing a stranger crying and not turning away. For opening your home. For sharing your son. For understanding. Thank you for accepting our invitation. For being kind to Oliver, for... She paused, something soft and uncertain crossing her face. For reminding me that there can still be joy in life. Their eyes held for a long moment, and Edmund felt something shift irrevocably in his chest. This wasn't just gratitude or appreciation for kindness. This was something more, something that both excited and terrified him. Good night, Amelia. Good night, Edmund. Merry Christmas. As he walked through the cold night air back to his empty townhouse, Edmund's mind was full of brown eyes and warm laughter, and a 5-year-old boy who'd seen a grown man crying and decided to share his mother. For the first time in 3 weeks, Edmund went to bed not thinking about death and loss, but about life and possibility. And tomorrow, he would see them again. Edmund woke on Christmas morning with a lightness in his chest that had been absent for months. The grief was still there. He suspected it always would be, but it was accompanied now by something else. Anticipation. Hope. The memory of Oliver's earnest face as he'd offered his handkerchief. Amelia's understanding smile across the dinner table. The warmth of their home, so different from his own grand, echoing spaces. He spent the morning reviewing correspondence and attempting to focus on estate matters, but his mind kept wandering to Upper Brook Street. Finally, he gave up the pretense of work and devoted himself to the more pressing matter of gifts. Showing up to Christmas dinner empty-handed would be unconscionable, but what did one give to a widow and her precocious son? Edmund consulted with his butler, who suggested toys for the boy and perhaps flowers for the lady. Something more personal, I think, Edmund said thoughtfully. The child mentioned he enjoys military history, and Mrs. Hartwood, she deserves more than standard flowers. By the time he left for the Hartwood residence, Edmund carried a carefully wrapped box containing a complete set of lead soldiers, more detailed and historically accurate than Oliver's wooden ones, and a leather-bound first edition of a collection of poetry by William Wordsworth for Amelia. He'd remembered her mentioning that she enjoyed reading in the evenings, and Wordsworth seemed appropriately thoughtful without being too intimate. Matthews opened the door before Edmund could knock, his expression carefully neutral, though his eyes held a gleam of approval. His Grace, "The Duke of Thornhaven," he announced unnecessarily, as Oliver came barreling down the hallway. "Edmund, you came. Mamma said you would, but I was worried you might have had Duke business and forgotten about us." "I could never forget about you," Edmund said, surprised by how much he meant it. He knelt down to Oliver's level. "Merry Christmas, my friend." "Merry Christmas." Oliver threw his arms around Edmund's neck in an enthusiastic hug. "I got so many presents. A new book and a wooden horse and, oh, Mama, come quickly." Edmund brought presents. Amelia appeared from the parlour, and Edmund's breath caught. She wore a dress of deep green that brought out the warmth in her eyes, her hair arranged elegantly. She looked beautiful, not in the elaborate, fashionable way of society ladies, but with a natural grace that made his heart race. "Your Grace, Edmund," she corrected herself with a smile. "Merry Christmas. You didn't need to bring anything." "It's Christmas," Edmund replied, rising to his feet. "Of course I brought gifts, though I fear they're rather modest." "Presents!" Oliver bounced excitedly. "Can I open mine now, Mama? Can I?" "Manners first," Amelia reminded him gently. "Take his Grace's coat, and then we'll go to the parlour." Oliver carefully took Edmund's greatcoat, which immediately dragged on the floor given the boy's height, and handed it to Matthews with exaggerated ceremony before grabbing Edmund's hand. "Come on. We have a goose again, and Mama made plum pudding, and there's so much food I'll probably explode, but in a good way." The parlour was warm and festive, decorated with the same simple charm as the previous evening. A modest pile of presents sat beneath the tree, and Edmund noticed that Oliver had already opened several. "Father Christmas was very generous this year," Amelia said, following his gaze, "though I suspect he might have gone slightly overboard." "Father Christmas knows that Oliver deserved extra presents for being such a good boy," Oliver announced confidently, "and because he was very good at cheering up sad dukes." Edmund laughed. "I cannot argue with that logic." He handed Oliver the box, and the boy tore into it with the enthusiasm only a 5-year-old could muster. When he saw the soldiers, his eyes went wide. Oh, Mama, look, they're so detailed. This one has a real sword, and this one has a cannon, and Edmund, these are magnificent." The boy immediately sat down and began arranging them, narrating an elaborate battle scene. Edmund watched with satisfaction, then turned to offer Amelia her gift. "This is far too generous," she protested, but she was already carefully unwrapping the book. When she saw the title, her eyes lit up. "Wordsworth. Edmund, this is beautiful. A first edition? I recalled you mentioning that you enjoy reading. I thought you might appreciate it." "I do, very much." She ran her fingers over the leather binding with obvious appreciation. "This is incredibly thoughtful. Thank you." Their eyes met, and Edmund felt that flutter again, stronger now, more insistent. He was beginning to recognize it for what it was. Attraction. Deep, genuine attraction to this woman who combined kindness with intelligence, strength with vulnerability. "I have something for you as well," Amelia said, seeming flustered. She retrieved a small package from beside the tree. "It's nowhere near as grand as your gifts, but..." Edmund opened it to find a pair of hand-knitted gloves, the wool soft and expertly crafted. "Did you make these?" "I did. I wasn't certain what to give a duke who undoubtedly has everything, but I noticed your gloves last night were rather worn, and I thought..." She trailed off, embarrassed. "It's foolish, really. You probably have dozens of fine leather gloves." "These are perfect," Edmund interrupted. "Truly, the most thoughtful gift I've received in years." He tried them on. They fit perfectly, the wool warm against his skin. "How did you know my size?" "I'm rather observant," Amelia said with a small smile. "An unexpected benefit of managing a household. One learns to judge measurements." "Edmund," Oliver called, "you must come see how I've arranged the cavalry. They're about to charge the infantry." Edmund joined the boy on the floor, and soon they were both engrossed in an elaborate battle reenactment. Amelia watched them with an expression Edmund couldn't quite read, something between amusement and wistfulness. Dinner was another warm, chaotic affair. Oliver kept up his constant chatter, this time mixing Christmas excitement with detailed questions about Edmund's estates. How many horses do you have? 100? 1,000? And his life in general. Do you have to go to parties all the time? That sounds exhausting. Unless there's cake at the parties, cake makes everything better. After the meal, Oliver insisted on showing Edmund every single one of his Christmas presents, providing detailed explanations and demonstrations. Edmund found himself genuinely interested, asking questions that made the boy beam with pride. "You're very good with him," Amelia said quietly, when Oliver had run upstairs to fetch yet another toy. "Most adults have lost patience by now." "He's easy to be good with," Edmund replied. "He's enthusiastic and curious and surprisingly wise for his age. I find myself enchanted, I suppose, by his view of the world." Charles felt the same way. Amelia's voice was soft. "He used to say that Oliver reminded him why life was worth living, because our son sees wonder in everything. Your husband sounds like he was a remarkable man." "He was. Kind, intelligent, funny. He made every day feel like an adventure." She paused. "I never expected to be a widow at 28. Never imagined raising Oliver alone. Some days it still doesn't feel real." Edmund moved closer, his voice gentle. "How did he die, if you don't mind my asking?" "A fever. It came on suddenly, and within a week he was gone." Amelia's eyes were distant. "The physicians couldn't explain it. One day he was healthy, the next he was burning up with fever, and then—" She shook her head. "Oliver was only 4. Too young to fully understand. He kept asking when Papa would come home. That must have been unbearable." "It was. Still is some days." She looked at Edmund directly. "But life continues, doesn't it? We carry our grief, but we also carry on. For the ones who need us." Before Edmund could respond, Oliver thundered back down the stairs with a wooden horse that was nearly as large as he was. "Look! Father Christmas brought me Prince. He's a destrier, that's a war horse, and he's very brave." The afternoon passed in a blur of play and conversation. As evening approached, Oliver began to droop despite his best efforts to stay energetic. Finally, Amelia insisted he go to bed. "But I want Edmund to stay," Oliver protested. "He can't leave yet. Edmund has been here all afternoon, darling. He needs to go home." "Can't he come back tomorrow?" Oliver's lip trembled. "And the day after, and the day after that." "We'll see," Amelia said, but she was looking at Edmund with a question in her eyes. Edmund found himself saying, "I would very much like to visit again if your mother permits it." "Of course," Oliver brightened immediately. "Mamma, you permit it, don't you?" "Yes, darling. Now off to bed with you." Oliver hugged Edmund tightly before heading upstairs. "You're my best friend, Edmund, even better than Tommy from next door, and he has a real pony." After the boy disappeared upstairs, Edmund and Amelia sat in the parlour with the companionable silence that had developed between them. The fire crackled softly, casting dancing shadows on the walls. "He's going to be heartbroken when you stop visiting," Amelia said quietly. "I worry about letting him grow too attached." Edmund felt a flash of something almost like panic at the thought of not seeing Oliver again, not seeing Amelia again. "What if I don't want to stop visiting?" he asked. Amelia looked at him, surprise and something else, hope, flickering in her eyes. "Edmund, these 2 days, Christmas Eve and today, they've been the happiest I've felt in months, years perhaps. Oliver is extraordinary, and you—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "You understand me in a way no one else does. When I'm here, I feel like myself, like the person I was before I had to build walls to protect myself." "I feel the same way," Amelia admitted. "When you're here, it's easier to breathe, easier to remember that life can still hold joy." She hesitated. "But Edmund, you must understand. Oliver has already lost his father. I cannot let him come to depend on you only to have you disappear when you return to your regular life. What if I don't want to disappear?" Edmund leaned forward. "What if I want this, visits, conversation, friendship, to be part of my regular life? Are you certain? The novelty of a precocious 5-year-old can wear thin quickly." "I don't believe it will. Oliver reminds me of why life matters, of how to see wonder in simple things. I need that." "And what do you need from me?" Amelia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Edmund met her eyes. "Understanding. Companionship. Someone who doesn't expect me to be the ice duke every moment." He paused. "Friendship." The word friendship felt insufficient for what he was feeling, but Edmund wasn't ready to examine those feelings more closely. Not yet. Amelia smiled, though there was something wistful in it. "Then, Friendship it shall be. You're welcome here whenever you wish, Edmund. Truly. They talked long into the evening, sharing stories of their childhoods, their losses, their hopes for the future. Edmund found himself revealing things he'd never told another soul, his insecurities about the dukedom, his loneliness, his fear that he was becoming as cold as his reputation suggested. "You're not cold," Amelia said firmly. "You're guarded. There's a difference. Cold people don't cry in parks or play soldiers with 5-year-olds or look at a Christmas tree with such longing." "I suppose you're right," Edmund smiled ruefully. "My father always said emotions were weakness. I spent years trying to prove I had none. And now? Now I'm realizing that emotions might be the only thing that makes life worth living." When Edmund finally left that night, he found himself reluctant to go. The walk back to Grosvenor Square felt longer, colder. His townhouse, when he entered it, seemed more cavernous than ever. But he had somewhere to return to now. Someone who welcomed him. A small boy who called him friend, and a woman whose smile made his heart race. It was more than he'd had in a very long time. The pattern of visits continued through the winter. Edmund found excuses to stop by Upper Brook Street several times a week, bringing books for Oliver, discussing household matters with Amelia, simply sitting by the fire and talking. He told himself it was because of Oliver, because the boy brought him such joy. But increasingly, Edmund had to admit the truth. It was Amelia who drew him back. Amelia's laugh, Amelia's insights, Amelia's gentle presence that made him feel more like himself than he had in years. One snowy January afternoon, Edmund arrived to find Oliver subdued, unusual for the energetic boy. "What's wrong?" Edmund asked, kneeling beside him. "Tommy's father took him ice skating today," Oliver said quietly. "On the Serpentine. I wanted to go, but Mama said it wasn't proper for us to go alone." His lip trembled. "I miss having a papa to do things with." Edmund's heart clenched. He looked up at Amelia, who stood in the doorway with barely controlled distress on her face. "What if I took you?" Edmund heard himself say. "Would that be proper enough?" Oliver's head shot up. "Really? You'd take me skating?" "If your mother permits it, yes. We could go tomorrow." "Mama, can we? Please?" Amelia looked between them, her emotions clearly warring. Finally, she nodded. "If His Grace is truly offering, then yes. I am offering," enthusiastically. Edmund stood. "And Amelia should come as well, make a proper outing of it." The next day they ventured to the frozen Serpentine. Edmund strapped skates onto Oliver's small feet, while Amelia watched, wrapped in a warm cloak. The boy was fearless, immediately trying to glide across the ice and promptly falling exactly as Edmund had at his age. "Remember what my father told me," Edmund said, helping him up. "Fall forward." Oliver giggled and tried again, and again. Each time he fell, he got up laughing, determined to master this new skill. Edmund found himself skating backward, holding Oliver's hands, guiding him across the ice. The boy's face was radiant with joy, and Edmund felt something in his chest expand painfully. "This," he thought, "this is what I've been missing, this connection, this purpose." When Oliver finally tired and went to warm up with hot chocolate from a vendor, Edmund skated over to where Amelia stood at the edge of the ice. "Would you like to try?" he asked, offering his hand. "Oh, I couldn't possibly." "Why not? When did you last do something just for the joy of it?" Amelia hesitated, then placed her gloved hand in his. Edmund helped her onto the ice, and she wobbled immediately, clutching at his arms. "I've got you," he said softly. "I won't let you fall." They moved slowly across the ice, Amelia gripping his hands tightly. She was laughing and shrieking by turns, alternating between terror and delight. Edmund found he couldn't stop smiling. "This is absurd," she gasped. "I'm a respectable widow. I should not be ice skating." "You're a woman who deserves joy," Edmund countered, "and you're doing wonderfully." As they glided across the Serpentine, Edmund became aware of how close they were, how her hands felt in his, how her laugh made his pulse quicken. This was more than friendship, more than gratitude or shared grief. This was attraction, deep, undeniable attraction. But even as he acknowledged it, Edmund felt confusion. Was it really Amelia he was drawn to? Or was it the package they represented, the warmth, the family, the way Oliver made him feel? He cared for the boy deeply, perhaps even loved him. Was he confusing his feelings for the child with romantic interest in the mother? He needed to think, to sort through these tangled emotions. They returned Oliver to the house, the boy chattering excitedly about his skating adventure. As they said goodbye at the door, Oliver hugged Edmund with his usual enthusiasm. "You're the best, Edmund. Better than any papa anyone could have." The words struck Edmund like a blow, both wonderful and terrifying. Oliver was looking at him not just as a friend, but as a father figure, and Edmund realized with sudden clarity that he wanted that role, wanted to be there for this boy, to guide him, to watch him grow. But was that fair to Amelia? To claim affection for her when his feelings might primarily be about her son? That evening, lying in bed in his silent townhouse, Edmund forced himself to examine his heart honestly. Yes, he loved Oliver. There was no question of that. The boy had wormed his way into Edmund's carefully guarded heart with his innocence and wisdom and unconditional affection. But Amelia, when he thought of Amelia, what did he feel? He pictured her smile, the way her eyes crinkled when she laughed, the gentle way she corrected Oliver without crushing his spirit, her intelligence when they discussed books or politics, the courage it took to continue living fully after devastating loss. And more than that, the way his heart raced when she entered a room, the way he found excuses to be near her, the way he'd caught himself staring at her lips and wondering what they would feel like against his. This wasn't just gratitude or situational attachment. This was love. He was falling in love with Amelia Hartwood. The realization should have terrified him more than it did. Instead, Edmund felt a curious sense of rightness, as if everything had been leading to this moment. But what about her? Did she feel the same? Or was he simply a convenient friend, someone to help fill the gaps left by her husband's death? Edmund resolved to proceed carefully, to continue visiting, to deepen their friendship, to let his feelings develop naturally. And perhaps in time, he would know if Amelia could ever see him as more than Oliver's friend. He had no way of knowing that Amelia, lying in her own bed across London, was grappling with her own revelation, that the Duke of Thornhaven had become far more than a friend, and she had no idea what to do about it. February brought warmer days and the first hints of spring. Edmund's visits to Upper Brook Street had become a fixture of his routine, so much so that his household staff no longer batted an eye when he announced he was going out to visit friends. Lady Thornbury, his godmother and one of the most formidable matriarchs in London society, was less sanguine about the situation. "Edmund," she said one afternoon, having cornered him at a parliamentary function, "there are rumours circulating about your frequent visits to the Hartwood residence." Edmund kept his expression neutral. "Mrs. Hartwood is a friend. Her son is delightful company. I'm certain they are both lovely." Lady Thornbury's eyes were shrewd. "But you must understand how it appears. A duke, still in mourning for his mother, spending excessive time with a young widow? Society will talk. Society always talks. Yes, but usually not about you. You've built a reputation for being above reproach, Edmund. Don't compromise that for... For what?" Edmund's voice hardened. "For friendship? For the first genuine happiness I've felt in years?" Lady Thornbury softened slightly. "I'm not trying to be cruel, my dear. I'm trying to protect you. If you have intentions toward Mrs. Hartwood, that's one thing. But if you're simply enjoying the novelty of domestic life, you're being unfair to her, and to her son." Her words struck uncomfortably close to Edmund's own fears. "I would never hurt them. Not intentionally, perhaps. But Edmund, you must ask yourself, what exactly are your intentions? Because that boy has clearly adopted you as a surrogate father, and his mother looks at you with, well, with more than simple friendship." "Does she?" Edmund wanted to ask. But he wouldn't reveal his uncertainty to Lady Thornbury. "I'm sorting through my feelings," he said stiffly. "I would appreciate your discretion while I do so." "You have it, always." Lady Thornbury squeezed his arm. But Edmund, sort quickly. The longer this continues without clarity, the more difficult it becomes for everyone involved. The conversation haunted Edmund for days. He knew his godmother was right. He couldn't continue in this limbo forever. But every time he resolved to have a serious conversation with Amelia about his feelings, something stopped him. What if she didn't feel the same way? What if their friendship was enough for her, and his confession ruined everything? More terrifying still, What if she did have feelings for him, but only because he provided stability and companionship in her widowhood, not because of any genuine romantic attachment? The answers came unexpectedly on a grey March afternoon. Edmund arrived at Upper Brook Street to find the house in unusual chaos. Matthews looked flustered as he opened the door. "Your Grace, perhaps this isn't the best time—" Mama, it hurts!" Oliver's wail came from upstairs. Edmund didn't wait for permission. He took the stairs 2 at a time, following the sound to Oliver's room. Amelia sat on the bed, holding her son, who was sobbing inconsolably. His face flushed with fever. "What happened?" Edmund demanded. Amelia looked up, and he saw the fear in her eyes. "He was fine this morning, but then he said his throat hurt, and now he's burning up with fever. The physician is on his way, but—" Her voice broke. "It's how Charles started, the same symptoms." Understanding crashed over Edmund. She was terrified, not just because her son was ill, but because illness had taken her husband. Edmund moved to the bed, sitting on Oliver's other side. The boy's eyes were glassy with fever, his small body trembling. "Oliver," Edmund said gently, "look at me, my friend." The boy's eyes focused on him with difficulty. "Edmund, my throat hurts terrible." "I know. The physician is coming to make you better." "I don't want to go be with the angels like Papa," Oliver whispered, and the fear in his young voice was heartbreaking. "I don't want to leave Mama alone." "You're not going anywhere," Edmund said firmly, though his heart was racing. "You're going to get better, and then we're going to go flying kites in Hyde Park like I promised. Remember?" "Promise." Oliver's hand found Edmund's. "Promise I won't die?" Edmund couldn't speak past the lump in his throat. He looked at Amelia and saw tears streaming down her face, saw her trying desperately to be brave for her son. Without thinking, Edmund gathered them both into his arms, Amelia on one side, Oliver on the other. "I promise we're going to do everything possible to make you well, and I'm not going anywhere. I'll stay right here with both of you." "You will?" Amelia's voice was barely a whisper. "Yes." Edmund met her eyes over Oliver's head. "For as long as you need me. For as long as you'll have me." The physician arrived and examined Oliver thoroughly. After what felt like an eternity, he pronounced it a throat infection. Serious but treatable with rest, fluids and certain herbal preparations. "Not what took his father?" Amelia asked, her voice shaking. "No, madam. This is quite different. The boy should recover fully in a week or so." The relief was so intense that Amelia swayed on her feet. Edmund caught her, supporting her weight. "Thank you, Dr. Harrison," he said, his arm around Amelia's waist. "Please send your bill to my address in Grosvenor Square." "That's not necessary," Amelia started. "It is to me," Edmund said firmly. After the physician left, they settled Oliver in bed with cool cloths and the prescribed medicine. The boy fell into a fitful sleep, and Edmund convinced Amelia to come downstairs for tea. She sat in the parlour, shaking despite the fire's warmth. Edmund poured her tea with hands that weren't entirely steady themselves. "I'm sorry you saw me fall apart," Amelia said quietly. "I try so hard to be strong for him." "You are strong, but you don't have to be strong alone." Edmund sat beside her, closer than propriety strictly allowed. "Amelia, I need to tell you something." She looked at him, her eyes still red from tears. "I've been visiting you and Oliver for months now," he began. "Initially I told myself it was because Oliver brought me such joy, because his innocence and wisdom helped me heal from my mother's death. And that's true. He does, and it did. Edmund, please let me finish." He took a breath. "But somewhere along the way I realized that my feelings had evolved, that it wasn't just Oliver drawing me here. It was you, Amelia. Your strength, your kindness, your intelligence, the way you make me laugh, the way you understand me without judgment, the way my heart races when you walk into a room." Amelia's teacup rattled in its saucer. She set it down carefully. "I fought it," Edmund continued. "I questioned whether I was confusing my affection for Oliver with romantic feelings for you, whether I was simply drawn to the idea of a family rather than to you specifically. But this afternoon, when I saw you terrified and trying so hard to be brave, when I realized I would do anything to protect both of you, I knew. This isn't about novelty or convenience or even about Oliver, as much as I love that boy. This is about you, Amelia. I'm falling in love with you. Perhaps I've already fallen." Silence stretched between them. Amelia stared at him, her expression unreadable. "I know it soon," Edmund rushed on. "I know you're still grieving Charles, and I would never ask you to forget him or to—" "Edmund, stop!" Amelia's voice was gentle but firm. "Stop talking and let me speak." He fell silent, his heart pounding. "I have been terrified," Amelia said slowly, "absolutely terrified of exactly this moment, because I've been falling in love with you too, and I had no idea what to do about it." Edmund's breath caught. "When Oliver brought you home that first night, I saw a grieving man who needed kindness. I offered it because Charles would have wanted me to, because it was the right thing to do. I never expected—" She paused, seeming to gather her thoughts. "I never expected to look forward to your visit so desperately, to find myself thinking about you at odd moments, to catch myself hoping you would arrive soon or stay longer, to feel my heart race when you smiled at me. Amelia, I felt guilty," she continued. "Charles has been gone barely more than a year. What kind of widow falls in love again so quickly? What kind of mother lets a man into her son's life knowing that Oliver is already far too attached?" Tears spilled down her cheeks. "But Edmund, when I saw Oliver sick today, when I was spiraling into panic about losing him the way I lost Charles, you were there. You held us both. You promised to stay. And I realized something." "What?" Edmund asked softly. "That love isn't betrayal. That Charles would want me to be happy, want Oliver to have someone who loves him as you so clearly do. That maybe, you were exactly what Oliver said that first night. Someone we both needed." Edmund cupped her face in his hands, wiping away her tears with his thumbs. "I love you, Amelia, not because you're convenient, not because of Oliver, but because you are remarkable. You are strong and kind and brave and beautiful, and I want to spend every day of my life proving that you can trust me with your heart." "I love you too," Amelia whispered. "I'm terrified, but I love you." Edmund leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. Their lips met in a kiss that was gentle and tentative and perfect. When they finally parted, both were breathless. "Mama! Edmund!" Oliver's weak voice called from upstairs. They hurried up to find him awake, looking small and ill in his large bed. "You're both here," he said with satisfaction. "I dreamed you went away and I was scared, but you're here." "We're here," Edmund assured him, sitting on one side of the bed while Amelia sat on the other. "Both of us." Oliver's eyes, though fever-bright, were shrewd. "Are you going to marry my mama now?" Edmund and Amelia exchanged startled looks over the boy's head. "Oliver!" Amelia gasped. "Well, you should," Oliver said reasonably. "You love each other, I can tell, and Edmund would be the best papa ever. Not instead of my real papa. Papa will always be my papa. But Edmund could be my now papa, and then we could all be a family properly." Edmund found himself laughing despite the situation. "You are an extraordinary child, do you know that?" "Yes," Oliver said without false modesty. "So will you marry her?" "Oliver, that's not something to decide when you're feverish," Amelia started. But Edmund was looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Actually, I think it's the perfect time. Clear thinking, no pretense." He turned to Oliver. "Would you like me to marry your mama? Truly?" "More than anything," Oliver said earnestly. "Except maybe a pony. But yes." "And you, Amelia?" Edmund's voice softened. "I know this is fast, I know it's irregular, but I also know that I want to spend my life with you and Oliver. I want to be there for illnesses and celebrations. I want to fly kites in Hyde Park and have Christmas dinners filled with chaos and laughter. I want to fall asleep beside you and wake up knowing I'm exactly where I belong." "Edmund," Amelia's voice shook. "Marry me, Amelia. Not because it's expected or convenient, but because we love each other. Because life is short and precious and we've both learned that happiness shouldn't be postponed." "Say yes, Mama," Oliver urged. "Please say yes." Amelia looked between her son and the man she loved, tears streaming freely now. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Edmund. I'll marry you." Oliver cheered weakly, then immediately winced at the pain in his throat, but his smile was radiant. Edmund kissed Amelia again, this time with the knowledge that this wasn't just a moment. It was a beginning. The wedding took place 6 weeks later in the private chapel at Thornhaven, Edmund's country estate. The delay was to allow Oliver to fully recover and to prepare the estate for its new mistress. It was a small affair. Lady Thornbury, a few close friends, and Charles's brother, the Marquis of Ashford, who gave Amelia away with tears in his eyes. "Charles would have loved him," Lord Ashford told Amelia before walking her down the aisle. "Your Duke. Charles always wanted you to have someone strong enough to match you. I think Edmund fits that description." Oliver served as ring-bearer, taking his duties with adorable seriousness. He'd insisted on wearing his finest suit and had practiced walking slowly so many times that he could do it in his sleep. When Amelia appeared in the chapel doorway in her white dress, Edmund felt his breath catch. She was beautiful, not just in appearance, but in the way she looked at him with complete trust and love. The ceremony was traditional, but infused with personal touches. Oliver stood between them, one hand in each of theirs, as the vicar pronounced them husband and wife. When Edmund kissed his bride, Oliver cheered loudly, causing laughter to ripple through the small gathering. "Are you my papa now?" Oliver asked Edmund immediately after. "If you'd like me to be," Edmund replied, kneeling to the boy's level. "I'd like it very much." Oliver threw his arms around Edmund's neck. "I love you, Papa Edmund." Edmund's eyes filled with tears, happy tears this time. "I love you too, my boy." The reception was held in Thornhaven's grand ballroom, though the small group of guests made it feel intimate rather than echoing. Oliver charmed everyone with his enthusiasm, regaling Lady Thornbury with tales of how he'd brought Mamma and Edmund together on Christmas. "Is that so?" Lady Thornbury said with amusement. "You fancy yourself quite the matchmaker, young man." "I don't fancy myself anything," Oliver said seriously. "I just knew Edmund was sad and Mamma was lonely, and they both needed each other. It was obvious." "Obvious indeed," Lady Thornbury agreed, her eyes twinkling. She leaned down conspiratorially. "You did an excellent job, Oliver. Your new father is a good man and he'll take excellent care of you and your mother." That evening, after Oliver had finally been convinced to go to bed in his new room at Thornhaven, Edmund and Amelia stood on the terrace overlooking the estate's grounds. Spring had fully arrived, and the gardens were beginning to bloom. "Are you happy?" Edmund asked, his arms around his wife. "Deliriously," Amelia replied, leaning into his embrace. "Though I confess it still feels somewhat surreal. Me, a duchess. You were always magnificent. The title just makes it official." Edmund kissed the top of her head. "Thank you for saying yes, for trusting me with your heart. Thank you for seeing us, Oliver and me, and choosing to stay." She turned in his arms to face him. "I know losing your mother was devastating, but Edmund, I truly believe she would be happy for you, happy that you found love again." "I think so too," Edmund smiled. "She always said I needed someone who wouldn't let me hide behind my walls. You certainly don't allow that." "No, and I never will." Amelia rose on her toes to kiss him. "You're stuck with me now, Your Grace, and with our very enthusiastic son." "Our son," Edmund repeated, savouring the words. "I like the sound of that." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over their new life together. Inside, Oliver slept peacefully, secure in the knowledge that his family was whole again. 2 years later, the Christmas of 1842 brought more snow than London had seen in years. Hyde Park was transformed into a winter wonderland, exactly as it had been that fateful Christmas Eve when a small boy had found a crying duke. Edmund stood near the same bench where Oliver had first approached him, but his circumstances couldn't have been more different. Beside him stood Amelia, her hand in his, looking radiant despite the cold, and bouncing excitedly in front of them was Oliver, now 7 and just as energetic as ever. "Papa, Papa, look. The ice is thick enough for skating. Can we go?" "Can we?" "In a moment," Edmund said, smiling at his son's enthusiasm. Even after 2 years, hearing Oliver call him Papa still filled him with joy. "But, Papa—" Oliver stopped mid-sentence, his attention caught by something else. "Oh, that lady looks sad. Should we help her?" Edmund followed his gaze to see a young woman sitting alone on a bench, looking forlorn. He felt Amelia's hand tighten on his arm. "Oliver," she said gently, "not everyone wants help. But Mamma, remember what you told me, about how helping Papa that Christmas was the best thing we ever did." "I do remember," Edmund said, kneeling to Oliver's level. "And you were right to help me. But Oliver, some people need space rather than intervention. We must respect that." Oliver considered this seriously. "How do we know the difference?" "That's a very wise question." Edmund glanced at the woman again. She didn't seem to be crying, just sitting quietly in contemplation. I think we watch and we listen. If someone seems to need help, we offer it gently. If they decline, we respect that. But you didn't decline when I offered help. No, I didn't. Because in that moment, I desperately needed someone to see me, to acknowledge my pain. You did that perfectly. Oliver thought about this, then nodded. So if the lady wants help, she'll let us know? Exactly. All right then. Oliver turned his attention back to the ice. Can we skate now, please? As they made their way to the Serpentine, Amelia squeezed Edmund's hand. He has your thoughtfulness now, along with his natural compassion. He has your wisdom, Edmund countered. He's an extraordinary blend of both of us. And of Charles, Amelia added softly. I see so much of his father in him. Good, Edmund said sincerely. Charles gave the world an amazing son. I'm honored to help raise him. The skating was chaotic and joyful, exactly as Edmund had come to expect with Oliver involved. The boy had improved significantly in 2 years and delighted in showing off his skills, while still falling regularly and laughing each time. Later, as they walked back toward their carriage, they passed the bench where Edmund and Oliver had first met. Edmund paused, looking at it with a mixture of nostalgia and gratitude. What are you thinking? Amelia asked. That 2 years ago I was the loneliest man in London. I'd lost my mother and couldn't imagine ever feeling whole again. And then a little boy offered me his handkerchief and his mother, and everything changed. We were all broken, Amelia said softly. But somehow our broken pieces fit together to make something whole. Papa, Mama, come on, Oliver called from ahead. We're going to be late for dinner. Coming, Edmund called back. He looked at Amelia and smiled. Shall we go home, Your Grace? Yes, let's, she paused. Edmund, I have something to tell you. Something in her tone made him stop. What is it? Dr. Harrison confirmed it this morning. I'm with child. We're going to have a baby. Edmund felt joy bloom in his chest. Pure, uncomplicated joy. He pulled Amelia into his arms, kissing her soundly right there in Hyde Park. A baby, he whispered against her lips. Amelia, that's wonderful. I'm due in early summer. Oliver doesn't know yet. I wanted to tell you first. He's going to be beside himself with excitement. Edmund laughed. He'll probably want to name the baby after one of his toy soldiers. Undoubtedly. They caught up with Oliver, who was waiting impatiently by the carriage. Edmund scooped him up, making the boy squeal with delight. What's got into you, Papa? Just happiness, my boy. Just happiness. That evening, after dinner at their Grosvenor Square townhouse, they gathered in the parlour, now decorated with Oliver's artwork alongside more refined pieces. Edmund had learned that a home didn't need to be perfectly elegant to be perfect. Oliver, Amelia said, your father and I have some news. The boy looked up from the book he was reading. Good news or bad news? Very good news, Edmund assured him. You're going to be a big brother. You'll have a baby sister or brother by summer. Oliver's eyes went wide. Then his face split into the biggest grin Edmund had ever seen. Really? Really, truly? I'm going to be a big brother? Really, truly, Amelia confirmed. Oliver launched himself at them both, hugging them fiercely. This is the best day ever, even better than when we got Prince. Can I help take care of the baby? Can I teach them about soldiers and skating? Oh, can we name them Wellington if it's a boy? We'll discuss names later, Edmund said, laughing. But yes, you can help with the baby. You'll be the best big brother. I will, Oliver declared. I'll protect them and teach them everything, and I'll tell them about how I found Papa crying in the park and brought him home and— He stopped suddenly, looking between his parents with unusual seriousness. I did good, didn't I? That day in the park? Edmund felt his throat tighten with emotion. You did more than good, Oliver. You saved me. Both of you did. We saved each other, Amelia said softly. All of us. Later, after Oliver had finally gone to bed, with strict instructions to be woken immediately if the baby decided to arrive early, Edmund and Amelia sat together on the sofa. The fire crackled softly, casting warm shadows on the walls. Do you ever wonder, Amelia asked, what would have happened if Oliver hadn't been quite so impulsive that day? If he'd listened when I told him not to approach you? I try not to, Edmund admitted. Because the alternative, A life without you and Oliver is unbearable to contemplate. I feel the same. She rested her head on his shoulder. I spent so long after Charles died thinking I would never be happy again, that I'd spend my life going through the motions for Oliver's sake. And then you appeared, sad and vulnerable and nothing like the Ice Duke everyone warned me about, and everything changed. The Ice Duke, Edmund said wryly. I haven't heard that epithet in months. Perhaps I've finally lived it down. Oh, you're still formidable in Parliament, Amelia assured him with a smile. Lady Thornbury told me you reduced Lord Wessex to stammering just last week with a single raised eyebrow. Lord Wessex was proposing legislation that would have hurt tenant farmers. He deserved the eyebrow. Amelia laughed, that warm, genuine laugh that Edmund loved so much. My fierce, protective husband, who plays dolls with our son and cries at sentimental novels. I don't cry at novels, Edmund protested. You absolutely do, I've seen you. Well, perhaps occasionally, when they're particularly moving. They sat in comfortable silence for a while before Edmund spoke again. Amelia, thank you. For what? For giving me a second chance at family. At love, at life, really, for trusting me enough to let me be Oliver's father, for loving me despite all my flaws and fears. Edmund, you have it backward. Amelia turned to face him fully. You're the one who gave us a second chance. You could have walked away that first night, dismissed us as a curiosity, but you stayed, you kept coming back. You chose us, again and again, until we finally had the courage to choose you back. I think, Edmund said thoughtfully, that we chose each other. All three of us. For soon, he added, placing his hand gently on Amelia's stomach. For soon, she agreed, covering his hand with hers. On a warm June day in 1843, Catherine Amelia Carrington entered the world with a healthy cry that could be heard throughout Thornhaven. Oliver was instantly smitten with his baby sister, insisting on being involved in everything from nappy changes to feedings. She's perfect, Mama, he whispered, watching Catherine sleep in her cradle. Even better than a pony. Edmund stood behind his son, one hand on the boy's shoulder. In the bed, Amelia smiled tiredly, more beautiful than he'd ever seen her. What do you think, Papa? Oliver asked. Do you think Catherine will want to learn about soldiers when she's bigger? I think Catherine will want to learn about whatever her brilliant big brother wants to teach her, Edmund replied, even if she'd rather learn about dolls and tea parties. Oliver wrinkled his nose. Even then, because the best gift you can give your sister is accepting her for whoever she becomes. Oliver considered this seriously. That's what you did for me, isn't it? Accepted me even when I was loud and asked too many questions? You were never too loud or too curious, Edmund said firmly. You were exactly perfect as you were, just as Catherine is perfect now. Later, when Oliver had been convinced to go play in the garden, Edmund sat beside Amelia's bed, holding Catherine while his wife rested. She has your eyes, Amelia murmured drowsily. She has your nose, Edmund countered. And your beauty. It's too soon to tell whose features she'll have. I don't care whose features she has. She's ours, and she's perfect. Amelia's eyes drifted closed, but she was smiling. Edmund sat in the quiet room, holding his daughter, and marveled at the unlikely path that had led him here. 2.5 years ago, he'd been sitting on a bench in Hyde Park, drowning in grief, convinced he would spend the rest of his life alone. He'd had no idea that a 5-year-old boy with jam on his handkerchief and an overly generous heart was about to change everything. Thank you, Oliver, Edmund whispered to the sleeping baby. Your brother saved me before you were even born. He taught me how to love again, and now I get to love you too. Catherine made a small noise in her sleep, her tiny hand wrapping around Edmund's finger with surprising strength. From the garden, Edmund could hear Oliver's laughter as he played with the new puppy they'd gotten him, a consolation for sharing his parents' attention. Through the window, he could see Amelia's roses blooming in the summer sun. This was home. This was family. This was love. All because one small boy had seen a stranger crying and decided that what he needed most was family, biscuits, and unconditional kindness. Edmund smiled, pressing a gentle kiss to Catherine's forehead. Sometimes the most magnificent transformations began with the smallest acts of compassion. Sometimes salvation came in the form of a child's pure heart. And sometimes, the greatest love stories started with a simple offer. Don't cry, sir. You can have my mama. The end. Thank you so much for staying with us until the end of this beautiful journey. We hope you felt the warmth, the laughter, and the love that blossomed between Edmund, Amelia, and little Oliver. If this story made you smile or cry, please don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share it. Your support from the bottom of our hearts is what keeps us going, what gives us the strength to keep telling stories filled with love, redemption, and powerful twists. At the end of this video, another emotional story from our channel will appear. Click and continue exploring a world of romance, healing, and unforgettable moments. With love, The Legends of the Fall Team.